morning, everyone. By the time he loads the PPT, uh, see, what we are discussing today is nature-based solutions. Uh, any path growth that we want to take up in our country, it has to be a integrated approach where we look into the possibility of innovation of technology and practices that are available, but also not forget the traditional and natural pathways that possibly are available still for us to look into to be sustainably using the resource and growing the path of development that we want. And therefore, a nature-based solution is something that had been there earlier, but for some reasons we were less focusing on it. I'll talk about a few things, something that we have done ourselves on. What we believe is, next please. I'll skip some of these introductory slides as well, please, next. Next. So if you look into the available nature-based solution, this was quite emphasized in the World Water report, development report of 2018, where they talked about a lot of intervention and how that should be implemented on in cities, in locations, sub-rural, rural, peri-urban areas, etc. And all of these are the kind of bouquet of interventions that are very much possible. What is the idea of it? The idea is that we allow the natural resource to retain themselves sustainably, be there for a longer period of time, not get polluted, and still we are not talking about very high tech intensive, high cost intensive kind of interventions. And all of these are very much a part of the intervention that we are talking about. Next, please. Next. So I'm trying to make up for the time, possibly it's 7 minutes as I'm told. See, what has been the case is that the kind of investment that one wants in the water sector, that has been really very slow, and the kind of investment actually is made is very less as compared. As I said, what we need to do is look into the green and grey infrastructure, involvement into our growth, development, and pathways for water resource use by and large, which are cost effective as well. And most importantly, I think the integration of that through policy is very important, something that you are emphasizing for the Sponge City. I'll come to that as well. I have, coincidentally, Mr. Yu, he had been interacting with us, and he has been kind enough to share his work as well. So you have already shared. I will not go into details. Next, please. But there are a number of examples, which are there. I'll share some of them which are there in our country, otherwise outside, but also some of them which we have ourselves implemented on ground. Next slide, please. So if you look into Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Kolkata, Andhra Pradesh, they have all good examples of how people, for example, in Gujarat, how they actually looked into the prevention of, they prevented construction into the the adjacent area of the river, how, for example, Madhya Pradesh looked into managing traditional water bodies, how Kolkata looked into the wetland management and really reduced the need of STP. And likewise, if you look into the Andhra Pradesh, they adopted an entire community-led kind of initiative of afforestation, which reduces the soil erosion, holds the water, and therefore is a good sustainable way of making the water available, reducing the pollution, and so on and so forth. All of these are there. Many other examples are there as well. But possibly we need to scale them up at a level where it makes a critical mass change. Next, please. So Sponge City has been exemplified already, so I will not talk about it in much detail. The only thing that I will emphasize is China, and a lot of examples are there, she mentioned already. What they did was they turned a problem into an opportunity. They were facing flooding, they are facing pollution. Next, please. Next. So if you look into the left and right, this left part was what they were facing, pollution, flooding, and what they converted this into a beautification and a barrier kind of system which created a buffer zone for that water to not really penetrate and go into a flood mode, but rather gets retained. They planted a lot of plantation and trees, which holds the water, retains the water for a longer period of time, and that beautification of that actually becomes more of a place to go for. So all that is something which is very much feasible across. She has emphasized enough. I'll not go in more details on. Next slide, please. Next. Next. So you can see basically, in dry season and flood season, how this works. In the flood season, it still is very much manageable location, while in dry season, it's a place where you can go and spend some time on. Next, please. So some of our initiative that I want to talk about in the context of nature-based solutions is, for example, groundwater recharge. Now, we have been doing a lot of interventions on, making the local, involving the local community, looking into how we can source the rainwater which is available in a particular catchment, scientifically modeling, identifying the catchment location, the potential, identifying the right kind of recharge location and right kind of structure for recharge, and doing it on ground. And so we have done a number of such interventions, across the country. This is an example of rural Bangalore. Next, please. Farm, pond, agri-irrigation interventions. This is a pond rejuvenation intervention which we did recently in Punjab. Basically, around 19 lakh kiloliter of water we were able to recharge through these interventions. Basically pond rejuvenations. So what you see at the top of it was all this filthy dump yard which was almost a redundant pond, not even pond because water was not there. And we just converted, rejuvenated that, designed again, did the entire work for making it live again, and capturing the water from the catchment. And what you can see at the bottom is basically the structure created after that. And as I said, these were also having recharge shafts, so they were able to recharge to the ground, besides water being used for irrigation as well. So around 19 lakh kiloliter of water, by this intervention was taken up through this particular intervention. Next, please. I cannot go into too much detail, but in Punjab, we have a direct benefit transfer, initiative, a program called Pani Bachao Paisa Kamao. Now, some of those interventions which we, introduced to the farmer through a farm pond, demonstration was all about how you reduce the water consumption through more natural and more practical solution, something that you avoid wastages. For example, direct seeding, efficient seed varieties, laser leveling, and so on and so forth. There are many other interventions, including drip and sprinkler system. What we did was not being prescriptive, but rather being demonstrative to them as to what are the kind of options that are there and how much of benefit you can accrue. We left it to the farmers to choose what they want to prioritize, rather than we prescribing them to what we are suggesting. And farmers chose 3, 4, or 5 of them. And they were very much happy, because the idea was to let them choose and adopt, so that the entire intervention becomes sustainable, rather than it became having a kind of prescription and then becoming cost effective and then being not sustainable. Very much you can see the kind of percentages of saving of water and energy both in this case. Next, please. I want to give a more detail of a particular intervention which possibly is very much related to a river, nature-based solutions called riverbank filtration. Next, please. Along with the partners, we have taken up lot many, actual designing and implementation of riverbank filtration system in parts of the country. For example, in Karnataka, in Goa, in Maharashtra. So I'll give you a couple of examples, possibly to save time. Next, please. So, for example, if you look into the Karnataka region, I think in Kali River. So what we did was we looked at, so we firstly engaged with the local community. What happened? There was a location where the water was being used from the river and the water was polluted. Villages had no option to, basically use the water from any other source. What we did was we looked into so what is riverbank filtration? What you do is you basically create a well near the, river bank, and the water is forced to pass through the soil, which is strata, which is between the well and the river, and that strata basically works as a filtration system, and also it's containing the bacteriological and microorganism sort of growth. It also helps into neutralizing the kind of pathogens and all. So all of that was taken into account, designed, defined, and constructed. So I cannot go into details of all that phases, but just to share with you. Next slide, please. You can see this entire phase of basically drilling and identifying the site. Next, please. So what we did was we looked into what is the impact pre and post. So as I said earlier, they were using polluted water from the river, basically with heavy metals and bacteriological contamination. The local community shifted totally towards the riverbank filtration well, where the water was being sourced from, and they were using this water completely after the intervention was given. So we compared it with the other available wells in the location versus the RBF well, and what we found was, next slide, please. Next slide, please. that the bacteriological contamination in the form of coliforms and E. coli, this particular system was able to reduce to the level of around 98, 95%. And also we looked into the heavy metal, which was, so for example, something that was of a concern over there, lead and I think copper. And even that was significantly, reduced through the, this system, riverbank filtration system, to the tune of around, I think, 90, 98%. Next slide, please. We also, so what we found was that this is not a system. Let me clarify. We work on other technologies as well, and there are lot many other intervention and project that we have been working on wastewater recycle, reuse, resources recovery. Let's not take this as a 100% solution which can give you, any kind of, treatment from whatever level to zero. No, that will not happen. This is more of a polishing technology which will aid you to reduce your cost for, your treatment and access of water in a particular location. And it's a significant reduction that I'm talking about. The rest of it, you can use a polishing technology again and basically meet the last mile, requirement of your water for particular use, for example, drinking. But this particular water was good enough for, irrigation. So the location that, we were applying this for, the local farmers were very well using this for irrigation activities. Now, RBF is excellent technology which can be also clubbed with, solar system. Next slide, please. So what we did was in Goa, Sal River side, we applied this solar-based kind of, riverbank filtration system where it was for a local small community. But what we used was a solar-based power system for this entire system to work. And we were able to produce around 5 meter cube per hour of water sufficient for around acre or 2 acres of basically agricultural use. So the possibilities are quite a lot, and I thought this is one of those examples which we had applied. So I'll share that experience with you all. Next, please. We are also working with in a project and Nitin had been colleague in that particular project as well, called Pavitra Ganga. It's still running. And one of amongst the bouquet of technology that we are testing in that and applying on ground, one of them is, next please, Constructed Wetland Plus, which is also a nature-based solution. What we are doing in this one is basically using kind of, besides the vertical, typical vertical flow wetland system, but we are also applying some kind of, granular material and, activated carbon kind of components, as well as a few strata as well, to see that we are able to achieve much more of filtration than what is being normally achieved in a wetland system. That's why plus. What we are able to see, and possibly we will be able to go for testing, has shown that it can actually reduce to the level of, I think, around 80% of heavy metals and around 60-70% of pharmaceutical byproducts. Or something like that, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, the idea is that we use the current knowledge and the natural resource as much as possible to see that the solutions that we are able to bring out for treatment, provision, access of water, efficiency improvement, etc., can be done in a more sustainable way. So I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I'll take it up later. Thank you.